Welcome to my books and storytime by MyBookSummary.com. Business Adventures by John Brooks. John Brooks' Business Adventures is not a traditional business manual. It doesn't list rules for success or magic formulas for making millions. Instead, it offers something far more valuable. Timeless stories from the corporate world, stories of ambition, greed, innovation, failure, and the unpredictable human nature that drives business itself. Each chapter dives into a different tale, drawn from real events, and while these stories are rooted in the past, the lessons they hold are every bit as relevant today as they were decades ago. In fact, the messiness of human nature in the corporate world is something no spreadsheet or strategic plan can fully account for, which is exactly why these stories continue to resonate. Chapter 1: The Fluctuation. The stock market at its most human. The first chapter opens with the wild, irrational world of the stock market, particularly a roller coaster day in May 1962 that became known as the flash crash of its time. Brooks doesn't dive into dry numbers or economic jargon. He paints a vivid picture of the traders, the analysts, and the confused investors all trying to figure out what the hell was happening. Prices plummeted, then skyrocketed, and no one could explain why. What Brooks captures so brilliantly is how the market, supposedly rational and data-driven, is really just a collection of human emotions, layered with fear, greed, and herd mentality. The story is a reminder that markets are never just about data. They are shaped by stories people tell themselves about companies, about the future, about other investors' actions. This chapter perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the book. Business is not cold logic. It's human nature playing out in real time. And in a world where algorithms and AI now drive so much of trading, it's easy to forget that behind all of it, it's still human psychology running the show. Chapter 2: The Fate of the Edsel, a billion-dollar misstep. If there's one chapter every business student should read, it's this one. The Tale of the Edsel, Ford Motor Company's legendary flop. Ford, with all its experience, money, and power, set out to create a revolutionary new car in the 1950s. Instead, they produced one of the most infamous failures in corporate history. What went wrong? Everything. The marketing was out of touch, the product itself was mediocre, and worst of all, the public just didn't care. It was a classic case of corporate arrogance, assuming that because you're big and successful, you understand what the customer wants. Brooks doesn't just chronicle the product failure itself. He takes readers into the culture of Ford at the time, revealing how corporate groupthink, blind optimism, and the refusal to admit mistakes led to disaster. What makes the Edsel story so timeless is that it happens over and over again. Companies still pour millions into products no one asked for, convinced that their superior knowledge will make the world fall in love. It rarely works. Innovation is important, but so is listening, and Ford simply wasn't listening. Chapter 3: The Federal Income Tax. A system built on trust and confusion. In this chapter, Brooks turns to a topic most people try to avoid: taxes. But he manages to make it not only interesting but genuinely entertaining. What he highlights isn't the technical details of tax law, but the strange, fragile relationship between the government and taxpayers. The income tax system, he explains, relies more on voluntary compliance than force. Most people, even if they grumble, pay their taxes honestly, not because they love paying taxes, but because they believe the system is mostly fair. But what happens when that trust breaks down? Brooks tells stories of cheaters, loophole finders, and political pressures that have shaped the tax code over time. It's a reminder that even systems as seemingly rigid as the tax code are human constructs, shaped by lobbying, public opinion, and the quirks of political compromise. And as recent tax scandals have shown, the tension between fairness and exploitation is as alive today as it was in Brooks' era. Chapter 4: A Reasonable Amount of Time. The Saga of Insider Trading. Insider trading, the ultimate business crime of profiting from information not available to the public, takes center stage in this chapter. Brooks walks us through a legal case from the 1960s, capturing the courtroom drama, the financial complexities, and most importantly, the moral gray areas. The case involves Texas Gulf Sulfur, a mining company that discovered a massive copper deposit, triggering a frantic scramble by insiders to buy up stock before the public found out. What Brooks captures brilliantly is the way morality shifts when money is involved. These were not hardened criminals. They were smart, respectable executives who simply couldn't resist the temptation of a sure thing. Their downfall was not just a personal tragedy but a public reckoning, forcing the legal system to define what counts as insider trading in the first place. It's a case that still echoes through every modern scandal, from Martha Stewart to Elon Musk's tweets. Chapter 5: Xerox. From breakthrough to bureaucracy. The story of Xerox is a classic rise and fall tale, a company that went from world-changing innovation to bureaucratic complacency. Brooks traces how Xerox, born from a revolutionary copying technology, dominated the business world for a brief shining moment. But success bred arrogance, and soon the company became slow, cautious, and risk-averse, even as competitors nipped at its heels. The heart of the story is a cautionary tale for every successful company. How do you keep innovating when you're already on top? Xerox's culture, once scrappy and experimental, became bloated with layers of management, where decisions took forever and bold ideas were smothered by committee. It's a reminder that the biggest threat to a successful company isn't external competition. It's internal decay. Chapter 6: Piggly Wiggly. A short squeeze for the ages. Long before GameStop, there was Piggly Wiggly, the grocery chain whose eccentric founder Clarence Saunders decided to wage war on short sellers. When Wall Street speculators tried to bet against his company, Saunders launched a bold and reckless scheme to buy up every available share, squeezing the shorts into oblivion. The plan worked until it didn't. Saunders, caught between regulations and his own hubris, lost control of his empire. But Brooks' retelling captures the psychological drama behind every financial bubble and short squeeze. The clash between the visionaries and the skeptics, between real value and speculative frenzy. Piggly Wiggly's story is both hilarious and tragic, and it perfectly illustrates how emotions drive markets far more than data does. Final thoughts: timeless lessons from business history. What makes Business Adventures such a beloved classic is that it isn't about formulas or frameworks. It's about people. Each story shows how human nature, our greed, ambition, creativity, fear, and arrogance, shapes the business world more than any economic theory ever could. Whether it's Ford's arrogance with the Edsel, Xerox's paralysis at its peak, or the irrational frenzy of the stock market, these stories reveal that business is, above all, a human adventure. John Brooks understood something many business writers miss. The characters matter more than the numbers. Companies succeed or fail not because of abstract strategies, but because of the flawed, brilliant, stubborn people who run them. And in that, the lessons of Business Adventures will never grow old. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends. And let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.